What's up guys, Taylor here with Syzygy Coffee, and today we are going to talk about the Chemex. So the Chemex is a coffee brewer that was designed by German inventor Peter Schlumbaum in 1941. So yeah, the Chemex has been around for over 80 years. Personally, it is one of my go-to brewers. I use it at least 2 or 3 times a week. It is one of my favorites simply because it delivers a very smooth, very silky, very clear and clean cup. So if that is something that you're interested in obtaining whenever you're brewing coffee, then the Chemex is definitely the brewer for you. The design itself is very beautiful. It comes in this well-made glass carafe and it is surrounded by this wooden grip tied down with leather. The contrast between what you get with the wood and the glass and then have the coffee inside, I think just looks spectacular. Now, the reason why the Chemex delivers such a clean cup of coffee is thanks to the filter. The reason for why it delivers such a clean cup is because it is a very thick paper. So this is definitely the type of paper, the type of filter that you want to rinse with hot water. Now, I can say that in the coffee world, it's divided in 2 camps. People who love the Chemex, people who hate the Chemex. And it all comes down to this guy, specifically because, since I mentioned before, it's such a thick piece of paper, it'll be capturing a lot of the oils within the coffee in the filter. And if you know anything about coffee and how it works when you brew it, you not only are extracting the caffeine from the coffee, but the little flavors that come from the roast profile come from those oils within the coffee bean. So in short, it is a very effective filter, and you'll get a very, very clean cup, a very, very smooth and silky cup of coffee. So I like it simply because if you have a batch of coffee and you start brewing it in different methods, you'll get a different taste from a Chemex or a Calita or an AeroPress, and you start finding different taste notes that you are actually falling in love with. And at the end of the day, that's what's important. It's what you like. Now, enough of the introduction. I'd like to talk about how we brew with the Chemex. It's going to be more oriented to beginners. So if you just got a Chemex and have no idea how to brew it, if you have a Chemex that's just collecting dust in the corner, if you have a friend or a family member who has a Chemex they never use, steal it from them and start brewing on it, because it is fantastic. Now, there is an alternative to the paper filter, which is the metal mesh. Some people like that. I particularly don't, simply because the point of the Chemex is using that filter that keeps all the oil within the filter, whereas with the metal mesh, you'll get more of that oil and that extraction. To that extent, I would just use a French press or any other brewing method that has a more porous filter. So for this tutorial, we are going to need a few things. First and foremost, of course, the Chemex. A Chemex filter like this one, or the round one, or even the metal mesh. A scale, you can get these online on Amazon. They're super cheap. They're like 15 or 20 bucks. They're very precise. I've been using these ones for a number of years now, and they work great. The more precise your scale, the better. If it has a timer, that's fantastic. If not, you can just simply use your phone. A gooseneck kettle like this one is very, very helpful. And it also has a thermometer. If you don't have a thermometer on yours, simply boil the water and wait for a couple of minutes. Just leave it off of the heat, and that temperature should be good enough for you to brew. Something to help you stir the coffee around if it gets clogged. I use the one that comes with the AeroPress. You can use a spoon. A wooden spoon would be even better, but this is definitely optional. And last but not least, freshly ground coffee. The consistency that you're looking for the coffee is coarse. A point of reference would be thicker than table salt and sugar, and around the same consistency as coarse salt. I'm gonna give you the ratio that I work with on every single brewing method that I have, except espresso. So that ratio is gonna be 15:1, and that means 15 milliliters of water for every gram of coffee. 15:1. So if you have 10 grams of coffee, you'll need 150 milliliters of water. For this recipe, we're going to be working with just 15 grams of coffee. That means that we are going to be needing 225 milliliters of water, and that is not including the water that you're going to be using to rinse the papery taste out of the filter, which by the way, you of course have to discard afterwards, else it's going to be a disaster. You're going to get a lot of coffee tasting like watered down paper. Heating your water and wait until it reaches around 89 degrees Celsius, 192 degrees Fahrenheit, or as I mentioned before, simply run it to a boil, remove it from the heat and wait a couple of minutes. Once that's happening, grab your coffee and grind it to the consistency I mentioned before. Remember, coarse salt. Now, the way you want to put the filter on the Chemex itself is like this. You're gonna open up the Chemex filter. So you have one flap on one side and 3 flaps on the other. This side is gonna be much thicker and stronger. So you're gonna wanna position that on the spout like this. And the reason we do that is whenever you start adding the water and the coffee and start brewing, this tends to collapse into the little spout. What can occur is you'll get a vacuum. Remember when you were little and you would grab a straw and hold a little bit of water or soda by just pressing on the top? So the same thing is going to be happening here. Imagine like this is a straw, and if you clog this part, there's no water or air going to be coming in and out. So if that happens, simply move the little filter around and you should be able to unclog this. But it's very important that this stays with a constant airflow. After you place your filter, go ahead and put it on the scale. You don't have to turn it on yet, and simply start adding some of that hot water on top of the filter. Once you do that, try to coat as much of the filter as possible. If you can't, do it twice, because you'll remove both the residue from little paper bits and that horrible paper taste. Once you've thrown that water out, it is time to add the coffee. So it's pretty straightforward. Grab your scale, grab your Chemex, put it on top, and you will proceed to press the tare button or zero it out. That way you'll know exactly how many grams of coffee are going in, and simply multiply that number by 15. Now, once you know exactly how much water is going to go into the Chemex, you'll go ahead and proceed to do the bloom. So the bloom is a process in which you add a bit of water to that very first batch of coffee, and it'll bloom and start growing. And the reason we do this is to degasify the coffee and watch it expand. As it expands, it's going to allow for a better flow for future pours. Another thing that's important is when you bloom the coffee, you'll be able to see it grow, and that actually helps you determine if that coffee is fresh or not. If it's a stale coffee that's been sitting around for months and years, it's not going to bloom. The fresher the coffee, the more of a bloom action you'll get. Now, to perform the bloom, it's pretty straightforward. However much coffee you have in here, you're gonna multiply it by 2. So in this case, we have 15 grams of coffee multiplied by 2, that is going to be 30. So that's how many milliliters of water you're gonna add. You're gonna start doing a circular motion. You don't have to be super precise. It doesn't have to be 30 milliliters exactly. It can be 35, 40, 25, that's perfectly fine. But as long as you do this once, it's gonna be perfect. So overall, you're looking to do a total of 4 pours. The first one was the bloom, and then you're gonna be needing 3 additional pours. The 3 additional pours are gonna be for 65 milliliters instead of 30. So if you add them all up, it's gonna be 30 plus 65 plus 65 plus 65 for a total of 225 milliliters of water, which is exactly how much you need for the 15 grams of coffee. Now you'll start your second pour as soon as the bloom has done filtering, and that's gonna take around 40 seconds or so. Afterwards, you're gonna add the 65 milliliters of water in a circular motion. You're gonna wanna try and cover as many of the grounds as possible. You can do it in a spiral, going from the center outwards and then back in. Once that second pour is done, you'll just repeat the process. Wait for it to filter out. It's going to be around 45 seconds, and then repeat that process. Once you're done on that 4th and final pour, you'll wait around a minute or so, and the entire coffee is going to be brewed. What's cool is that since this is complete glass, you'll be able to see the coffee filter through. If you watch this shot right here, I managed to capture it in slow motion. Pretty interesting to just see the little drops of coffee bounce around and not mix into the coffee itself. Be sure to remove the filter from the top of the Chemex. And just so you know, simply because you pour 225 milliliters of water, it doesn't actually mean you're going to be getting 225 milliliters of coffee, simply because the filter itself is going to consume and absorb some of the water as well as the coffee grounds themselves. So when you throw it out, you'll be left with less amount of coffee than the amount of water you poured in. So keep that in mind for your calculations. If you have people over, or if you're making a bunch of coffee simply for yourself, then be sure to take that into account. And that's it. Congratulations on brewing on your Chemex. If you guys have any other recipes that you use with your Chemex, any tips or tricks that you guys may be doing to improve your brewing method, please comment down below. Also, if you're interested in learning a little bit more about specialty coffee, I'll leave a link to a video right here. If you do happen to brew using this video as a reference, go ahead and post it on social and tag us at Syzygy Coffee. We are on TikTok, Instagram, and on Twitter. You can visit our website at syzygycoffee.com. And by the way, we are offering free shipping throughout the entire United States, as well as buy one, get one 50% off of any purchase. If you're interested in getting a Chemex, a scale, a gooseneck kettle, or the filters, I'll leave a link in the description down below. I'll be posting more brewing tutorials on different brewing methods, and I'd love to hear from you guys. What would you guys like to see next? If you like this video format, consider leaving a like, subscribing to the channel, and I hope to see you guys on the next one. Take care.